Hi, Andrew, and welcome to Starting Remote. I'm really happy to be hosting you.
Hi, Yulia. It's wonderful to be here. We're a fair way away from each other, so this is a truly remote podcast by the feel of it.
Yeah, it is a
What's the
truly
time over
remote
there?
one. It's 9 in the morning.
Yeah, it's dinner time over here, so yeah,
Yeah,
good fun.
I think I'm having coffee. You should be having wine.
Yeah, I should be having wine. I didn't plan that particularly well, but next time.
Exactly. Next time we do it, maybe we can do it at a time where we can both share some wine. Maybe a Friday or a Saturday, and I can
Bloody
start.
Mary for you.
Exactly. Andrew, for everyone to get to know you better, would you be okay to introduce yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So Andrew Blain, I'm an Australian from a little town called Woodend, which is just out of Melbourne. So a regional town up in the mountains. But as of 2019, I was commuting into the city 3 days a week and doing 1 day a week interstate. So flying 1 day a week. I am one of the founders of a company called elabor8, which is, we like to think that we're Australia's leading lean agile consultancy. But as of February, I'm the founder of the Remote Agility Framework, or as we like to call it, Remote AF, which is the world's first framework for effective remote working. It's built on agile principles and probably 3 or 4 decades of experience working with distributed and semi-remote and remote teams.
That's what I wanted to ask. What's your experience in working yourself remote and working with distributed and remote companies?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, my background, I started my career in technology, would have been late 90s. My first role was with a very small company, and I worked out of home office with only 2 or 3 people. I then went over to the UK and I worked in digital in an office with a fully co-located team. I came back to Australia and I did a range of kind of medium and large programs of work. So programs of up to sort of 4 billion Australian dollars in value, big banking transformations and telco transformations with largely distributed teams. So you had teams over in India and teams in China and other parts of the world. And then in 2009, I started the consultancy. We worked out of Melbourne, but we've got offices in Canberra, Sydney, Brisbane. We've serviced clients on site. We've serviced clients with kind of those always on half and half teams where you've got one team in one office and one team in the other office, and you've got a screen that sits at the end of the desk so you can always talk to the people on the other side. We've done programs that have been distributed across 4 or 5 continents and distributed in distributed agile and delivered some pretty amazing outcomes with those. So yeah, and that's just me. There's 5 or 6 co-authors of the framework, and they all have a mix of kind of on-site, distributed, remote team experience.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to hearing more about this, as it is the first in the world, right?
Yeah, we haven't found another one, so that's pretty cool. I did think there might be another one out there, but haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, maybe we can look for it together at some point and have them on the podcast as well and discuss
awesome.
the both, right?
Yeah.
But tell me a bit, what motivated you to start this? What drove you to start Remote Agility Framework?
Yeah, sure. Look, there's probably 2 primary reasons. The first is I was running a consultancy with 100-odd people. I was looking at the numbers coming out of Wuhan in January, and I was I've got a few connections who work in China in different cities, and I was hearing about their experiences with the virus. And from a strategic perspective for the consultancy that I run, COVID obviously presented a pretty significant threat that we had to act on. So we've had a couple of plays that we've run with from about February this year. One was building this framework, which we think is timely and necessary. The second one is building a software platform called Flowmatica, which we think will nicely blend with what we're doing with Remote AF. It's all about flow-based metrics for delivery teams. But the second and probably the more important piece for me is I've been trying to wrap sustainability into what I do at work for quite some time, and I was trying to find a way that I could scale out impact. When I started to look, I've always had an interest in remote working, being someone who works out in regional Victoria, and I've got a 3-hour commute. So I had a little hub that I go to down the road and sometimes work from home. But when I've read about remote working and the environmental benefits, I've been pretty excited in the past. And I kind of think that this is a point where you've got all this financial capital, and you've also got all this intellectual capital that's being aimed at solving the problem of remote working. So whether that's better digital tooling, or whether that's the tiger teams or the mission teams that have been set up in organisations with really smart people trying to tackle the problem in their workplace, or whether it's people doing remote learning with their students, or whether it's people in aged care facilities trying to teach older people how to use Skype or FaceTime so that they can communicate with their families while they're pretty restricted in terms of who they can see. There's all this capital that is being thrown at the problem, and the beauty of that is that it's shifted us from kind of an early adopter remote working into a mainstream remote working reality, and that's not going to push back, right? So this is a new or a next normal, or whatever you want to call it. The world has changed. It's not going to go back to being. No one's going to go back to fully on site. There's too many financial benefits for organisations. There's too many social and environmental benefits for people, and I just don't think you'll get the best talent now if you're not offering some sort of hybrid or remote solution for people.
Oh, for sure. While being face-to-face is still easier because we are not so used to working remote, I think that bringing solutions that bridge the gap is definitely the way to go. Right? Go ahead.
But we are getting used to it, right? Like this feels like riding a bike now.
Maybe it's easier for us who have worked remotely in the past or from co-working spaces, because I do have friends who really miss going to work. They really loved the commute because it gave them head time, and right now they feel like they are in a hamster wheel. Because the companies they work for, they just love meetings, and they are on Zoom or on Cisco or whatever the tool is 24/7. Some of them really need to show their face because otherwise they are not being seen by headquarters. So some are really burnt out and they're really missing the commute. But what they would do, even those people, they wouldn't go fully remote. They would go hybrid. They would like to have the choice.
Yeah. And look, that's what you've talked about there is precisely why we've built this framework. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the agile movement or business agility as a movement. We've been working for 10 years to try and build teams where leaders trust their people, where people have agency, where they have bounded autonomy, and they're not being watched the whole time to see if they're doing the right thing, because the environment has been set up so that they can be successful and can drive towards outcome. They've got that sense of autonomy and also directional alignment. It's really not fair to expect your people to sit in meetings on Zoom or Teams or whatever the tooling you're using all day. It's you'd well know that the cognitive impacts of a session over virtual collaboration are far more significant than a face-to-face meeting. And secondly, it's the least productive time of your day when you're sitting on VC. It's you've got half the people listening to you, half of them are tuning out a little bit, lots of distractions. It's hard to stay engaged. You're not getting the body language signals or any of the normal feedback loops that your mind expects. it's tough and it's unproductive. So yeah, we want to help organizations fix that problem.
Yeah, and I don't feel this is only an organizational issue. I think it's both ways, because I feel that at some point we as individuals are also responsible to understand that we need time off, and that maybe the next promotion or we don't get the full visibility every single time, but we don't have to be on video just to prove that we are better than our coworkers because we are there every single time, because that leads to burnout. And at some point there's so much an organization can do, right? There needs to be a bit of a balance from both sides.
Oh, 100%. Yep.
Yeah. So tell me a bit, what kind of industries did you work for? And when you say delivery teams, are you mostly talking about software development companies, or it's wider?
Yeah, so look, my earliest experiences were in digital teams, so building websites back when building websites was difficult. It's pretty easy nowadays. I think we used Webflow. We got our website up in about 15 minutes. It's great. Yeah, so I was sort of building CMS systems back in the 90s and early 2000s. Then I worked on a massive telecoms transformation and a massive banking transformation. Since then, as a consultant, you kind of work in lots of different industries. So I've done travel, I've done tourism, I've done wealth, I've done financial services, I've done media. There wouldn't be I've done travel, like airlines. There wouldn't be too many industries that I haven't touched over the last 10 years. Agile obviously comes out of the software development space, but there's been a lot of work done in Agile to make it fit for purpose for operational teams and for other parts of the business. And that's something I'm pretty passionate about as well. I kind of think when you think about organizations, they have this two-speed economy by design. You've got the operational expenditure in the organization that everyone's quite worried about because OPEX goes off EBIT, and executives are usually remmed on and rewarded on EBIT or EBITDA.
Numbers. Yeah.
But then you've got CapEx, which is kind of funny money, right? Like you spend the CapEx, you depreciate it over a period of time. It's someone else's problem in the future. So CapEx teams, I think, have been looked after. Like IT teams that are building capital assets for organizations, they get lots of training. They get lots of help with ways of working. They're paid well. And there's not that real focus on ripping the waste out and leaning it out and cutting heads and that kind of thing. Whereas the operational teams, they just don't get a whole lot of love. So one of the things that we specifically did with Remote AF was look at how do you make remote operations teams effective as well. So they're the teams that are custodians for revenue, that make sure that customer requests get fulfilled and keep the business running.
Let's stick a bit with agility. When you talk about agility, what's your view on it?
Yeah, sure. I suppose it's evolved over the years. So, as a software engineer, my first experience with agility was with extreme programming, way back in 2002, 2003. I learned about the Scrum framework on a government program when we were trying to build a grants management system. I learnt about the scaled agile framework in pretty early days when that was, I think, version 2 or version 3. I became a safe program consultant, and I thought that was the first time that someone had looked holistically at the technology portfolio and how to deliver large programs. And look, safe has its critics, but it still was an improvement on what was out there. I spent some time in probably 2014, 15, 16 learning about the Kanban method, which I think is a wonderful way to look at fit-for-purpose systems and really look across an organisation at how you improve things both in operational teams, in management teams, and also in your product teams. And probably more recently, I've been interested in how do you What does agility look like from an organizational perspective? So, what adaptive leadership, adaptive funding models, adaptive measurement, adaptive governance, all the things that sort of surround the system that have been constraints to agile adoption when we've tried to do it from the bottom up.
Do you think agile is for everyone, or there are limitations?
Look, I think that different frameworks fit different contexts better. So I would never tell a marketing team to roll out Scrum, because a lot of work in a marketing team is largely demand responsive. But I would tell a marketing team to have a look at the systems thinking approach to implementing Kanban or static, and really think about their system of work and build an evolutionary approach that has that continuous improvement loop in it. So to me, the core principles of Agile are time boxing, so work in short cycles so that you can learn more effectively, slice the work smaller so that it moves through the system faster, and you can get feedback from getting it out to customers quicker, and continuously inspect the system and try and improve it through experimentation. I think if you're doing that, that works everywhere. And it's I suppose they're the building blocks of agility, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not religious about this stuff at all, though. I don't really care what framework you use. They're all useful in context.
For sure. And I think this is what the remote first companies are actually preaching for, whether they call it agile or not. Right? Get it out there, get it out fast, try to see if there's any mistake, iterate, and then go back and do a better job.
Yeah, I think what the organizations that we work with, and we work with 40 or 50 organizations at elabor8, the ones that were doing agile well, remote working was easy for. Like they just slipped into remote working. I still think there's work to do for those organizations in terms of like the constraints have changed. So you no longer, you don't have the constraints of space. You don't have as much time constraint with a remote workforce. So you really should think about redesigning your operating model to fit those new constraints. But at the same time, they're not having nearly as much trouble as those organisations where you've got lots of different silos and work has to go through lots of silos, because within the team, the communications are pretty rich in a remote organisation. As soon as you started to expand team boundaries or multiple teams in a value chain, you can get a bit of information loss that you wouldn't get if you were sitting in the same office.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me a bit about the remote agility framework. Yeah,
sure. I'll give you the 2-minute intro.
Okay.
So basically, look, it's a modular framework that enables organisations to explore the way that they're working and adapt it to a new set of constraints. So we have patterns for helping your remote teams become high-performance teams by thinking about the system of work that they have, and by building empathy for their peers and their situation in their home environments, and also by redesigning the events. I think a lot of people have kind of gone, all right, we're remote now. We can still do the stand-up. And we're going to do it exactly the same as we always did the stand-up, or we're going to do our daily status meeting exactly the same as we always did our daily status meeting. We don't need to do that remote. We've got asynchronous options. We've got synchronous options. There's digital whiteboards that you can use. There's lots of fun things that you can do. There's tools everywhere. So, yeah, really rethink those events. So that's part of it. Make your teams speed up the journey to high performance for your remote teams. The second part of the framework is all about teams of teams. So basically, when you've got a group of teams that are working together to solve a problem or as part of a value chain in your organisation, how do you span the boundaries of those teams really well? So we've got patterns for planning effectively, so taking strategy and decomposing it across multiple teams. We've got patterns for remote operating model design. So really rethinking the way that you organise to deliver value in the remote context, carefully designing the teams, carefully designing the interactions between the teams. And we've got patterns for launching teams of teams if you're starting a new program of work, or if you've got a regulatory change that you have to do, or something like that. And then finally, we've got patterns for the enterprise. So we've got patterns for tackling strategy in the remote context, both building a view of the ecosystem that you operate and your landscape, and looking at movement and where you should apply attention. We've got patterns for taking strategy into delivery through the objectives and key results framework from Google, OKRs. Mm-hmm. But we've got some nice kind of tools and templates and patterns that make that easy. We've got approaches for remote leadership and also for governing remote organisation. So adjusting your governance frameworks so that you have, I suppose, you can distribute autonomy without losing control and alignment.
So when you say
that's kind of it.
Patents, are these for the various templates that you have created? And what do the templates do if they are templates?
Yeah, so there's a lot of canvases. Mm-hmm. There's method guides, there's canvases, there's instructions, there's training. We've got a whole training program around how to make teams more effective and how to do some of the more advanced things. It's basically it's our IP wrapped up in a nice little bundle that other people can use to make their organisations or organisations that they consult to or independently contract to more effective. And yeah, we've launched our early adopter program as of, I think we've got the kickoff meeting tonight. So we've got 18 very senior people, including 3 people who've written books on remote working, some pretty senior members of both the complexity and the agile communities, some people who run significant consultancies, both in Australia. I think we've got 8 countries on board. For an organisation that's literally, we signed the papers to incorporate about 3 weeks ago. It's pretty exciting.
Do you have customers who have already adopted the framework?
Yes. So we're working with a couple of 3 organisations in Australia. Mm-hmm. One of them a global organisation, so a healthcare provider that spans multiple countries is using Remote AF in their global digital transformation. We've got a medium digital enterprise in Melbourne that's using, actually we've got one telecom and one digital enterprise in Melbourne that are using the team level and the planning concepts from the team of teams level to take, they've kind of come out of their annual financial year strategy and they're trying to work out how to take things into their teams. So they're using those components. And we've got a small environmental management systems organisation that we use the leadership stuff with to work with their product leadership on really getting a better sense of what they should be taking into delivery.
Would you be okay without giving names or even sharing the industry, so we keep this as blank as possible, but to really give an example of how you maybe took one of your clients through all of the phases, right? To explore, to adapt, to think about their teams, to think about their enterprise.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So primary example of that is a digital company, be about 150 people in, they were based in the Melbourne CBD. Now they're based everywhere. And they're rethinking what their office is going to look like in the future. They came out of strategy. They had 3 fairly significant strategic pieces that were outside of BAU that they needed to get into the teams. They're an organisation that's really optimised for run. So what they do quite effectively, they've got an outsourced software platform that kind of handles a lot of the more complex transactional elements of what they do. So they've got a sales team, a marketing team, they've got some platform operations teams and technical people, some data science people, and then a bunch of customer service people that deal with different levels of customers, plus some compliance and that kind of thing. A lot of those pieces of work that they were trying to do spanned multiple functional teams within the organization. So what we did with the strategy was we used our all hands planning template. We basically got them to go through the strategic pillars and run small inceptions using remote AF canvases to try and understand exactly what needed to be done for that piece of work to the level where you could plan it effectively. And then we used the all hands planning approach to bring all the different teams together. It looks fantastic. I've got a video of it somewhere where you can kind of see all the teams interacting with this digital whiteboard at the moment and basically bringing their plans into a central plan so that we could start to look at resource contention or people, where people were overloaded, where there was excess capacity, and start basically sequencing the work. So that all happened over about a 2-week period. The teams that were required, so they're not full-time teams in this context. They're pseudo teams that are built around those strategic things, pulling from different parts of the organisation. But we've been launching those pseudo teams using the team launch canvas, and getting them straight into a working rhythm with Kanban systems and also the virtual abaya, which is kind of like the central information source that everyone can see and refer to for progress and that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm hoping to I had a chat to the CEO of that organisation a couple of weeks ago. I'm hoping to have a really nice case study and testimonial available for that in the short term. Very happy.
If I understand correctly, what the first bit did, so the 2 weeks, first 2 weeks, you basically started to reduce the strategic planning process complexity with the kind of tools that they use from the remote agility framework.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, we need to take some big hairy problems and turn them into actionable plans, slice them into iterative chunks of value that could then go into the delivery process. And some of that was technology work, some of that was campaign work. So they're a pretty data-centric organisation, so sort of digital campaigns backed by data science. Part of it was customer messaging, and there's also a fairly significant platform uplift piece.
What's a virtual abaya?
Okay, so we've used there's a concept from Toyota called abaya, which means room in Japanese. And I think a lot of people in the agile community refer to abaya rooms, which is a room, which sounds a bit silly, but we've used abaya rooms or rooms for several years now, both in running our consultancy. So there's a abaya room in our old Brisbane office, which we've now moved out of. There's an abaya room in our Sydney office and one in the Melbourne office. And basically what it has is all the information that you need so that when you've got complex decisions to make, you can quickly look and you can see everything that is at play when you're making that decision. I think the value in the abaya room is actually in keeping it up to date, because it forces you to really sit with the information and represent it in a clear and concise way. So as a leader, I found it as a powerful mechanism. We also use it on change programs. So when we've got an organisation that's looking to adopt agile at scale, it's nice to have somewhere which shows kind of where the program is at, where different teams are at, and kind of talk about the why and the roadmap for change and those kind of things, so that people can sort of sit in there and feel a sense of that progress. So that's the physical version. The virtual abaya is basically a digital version of that, and we've spent a lot of time thinking about what is the information that you need to surface at a team of teams level? So for a program, or for a department, or for a business process, or a customer journey, and then what is the enterprise level information that you need to surface for executives? And we've kind of got nice, fancy looking templates that people can use as a starting point for those.
When you build the canvases and the templates, did you use any known theories or methodologies or other frameworks?
We've drawn from so much in this framework. We're really standing on the shoulders of giants. I could talk about this all day, but I'll go through a little bit of it. So at the team level, there's some references to organizational relationships systems coaching, or ORSC. We've got Kanban method. We've got some Scrum. We've got the static approach. We've got some. We've got really leaned into some things out of the psychology community around how do you build empathy for teammates, and how do you kind of craft purposes that give teams a sense of identity. It's a lot of different stuff that we've pulled in at the team of teams level. We've looked at portfolio Kanban. We've looked at big room planning. We've looked at a whole range of stuff from the complexity field. We've looked at kind of scaffolding as a concept from Cynefin. Borrowed heavily. Actually, I'm not sure that. I think we kind of came to some similar conclusions to Matt and Manuel from Team Topologies around what are the important things in operating model design. When I read their book, I was like, oh, all right, this lines up really well with what we're trying to do. And I've also borrowed from some conversations with a lot of people that I've been having lately. Dave Snowden, Jay Bloom, Matt and Manuel. We've had a chat to Esther Darby, J. Alan Morris and Kirsten Clasey, who wrote the Remote Facilitators Handbook, which is a great book if you're facilitating in the remote context. Mark Kilby, Kevin Bear, who wrote the Phoenix Project. There's a whole bunch of people that we've kind of we've learnt from. Nigel Thurlow, Sonia Ligno. Yeah, lots of conversations, lots of experience. I think Tony was talking to David Marquette about leadership and some other stuff as well. So yeah, lots of really deep theory base. I'm a bit of a nerd.
But this is quite complex work. So did you use the remote agility framework to make the decision of what you're going to use and why? Or what did you use? Because putting all of these things together, it's not easy.
Yeah, look, I think we've had to do this as an organization for agile adoption when we work with big customers. So if we're working, like we worked across an $80 million portfolio at one of the higher education providers in Melbourne, and we had some amazing results. I think we halved the failure demand in the system, so that they were doing, rather than doing 30% value demand, they were doing 65% value demand or something like that. We roughly doubled the throughput. In order to do that stuff, we've had to do a lot of this anyway. So this kind of felt like a really good opportunity where we could go, we'll show the world all the cool stuff that we've been doing in private with some pretty impressive organisations. Like we worked on what I think is the biggest global transformation at ANZ. We were part of, Tony Ponton from the team was working with Jeff Smith very early days on the Suncorp transformation. We've had people who've worked at some pretty amazing digital organisations that have done some really cool things. It's just kind of pulling, I don't know, combined 40 or 50 years of being at the forefront of Agile and then adding that distributed remote aspect into it. And we've certainly done a fair bit of research as part of this as well. We're focused in on things like when I talked earlier about kind of some of the things that we're looking to unlock, you've got a whole bunch of environmental benefits, but we also need to be aware of the environmental challenges. So it's not enough to say, all right, we're moving the workplace out of the office now. We don't have any responsibility for their environmental footprint when they're working from home. That's an abrogation of responsibility. So we're trying to think about ways that organisations can take the savings that they're making on not seating people in offices and apply those savings to sustainability solutions for employees in the home. The same with safety, the same with ergonomics, the same with we've spent a bit of time with an organisation here that specialises in domestic and family violence because we've done research that suggests that people who are working from home are more vulnerable than they've ever been to their abusers. So patterns to try and help leaders to allow people to safely say that it would be better for them to work in an office or in a different place or in a hub without having to say, look, I'm at risk in this environment. We've really focused in on, all right, what are all the benefits? And then what do we have to understand to unlock those benefits without doing further harm?
How do you, because you're putting together very complex concepts and helping people go through complex decisions, how do you keep it simple for them so they don't get lost in terminology, they don't get lost in the complexity? How do you make sure that it's simple enough for them to adopt and use forward?
Yeah, look, so that's the training program is all about making some of those things simple. And the reason that we've picked the people that we have for the early adopter program is we want really experienced agile people who've got experience in remote environments, who can be those people who take the first cohort of people through this. And through that process, we'll probably find that there's some things that we have to simplify. I see us in late beta testing with some stuff. There's probably opportunities to simplify things down the track. But what we're trying to build is nice, simple, repeatable patterns that people can use that don't force them into applying a method, but they force them to sit back and think about their context and build something that works. So, for example, we're building a future perspective at the moment. We think that there's a lot of organisations that are about to go through a process. I might bring this up because I did promise to show you some stuff. I'll just share this screen very quickly. So I've worked with some very smart people on this. It's about to be released. Is that the one? That doesn't look like the one. Let's just zoom out a bit because there's a few different versions of this. Here we go. So this is a Miro canvas. We've built it using Jabe Bloom's work as a bit of a guide. I do need to catch up with Jabe and show it to him and make sure he's cool with it. But this is something that anyone will be able to use. We'll just release this on the public website for people. And the idea is that you take people through an approach to think about how they can work with their organisation to make the best of now and then to purposely evolve towards a more productive, flexible, engaging, sustainable and equitable approach to work. The way that we would get them to do that is, first of all, to spend some time thinking about the current state. So if we zoom in here, we get someone to facilitate a process where they go, all right, well, what's going well in terms of home life, work life, community, well-being, equitability in the workplace, safety, sustainability and risk, and use that as a little bit of a focusing point to say, what's the good stuff? We then ask them to project out and say, all right, if we stayed doing exactly what we're doing now, what sort of mess does that create? So are there any, is this thing going to stay the same with time? Is it going to get better with time, or is it going to degrade with time? And a lot of the things that I'm hearing from leaders at the moment is that they're really worried about the informal networks in the organisation. They're worried about how they do performance management effectively. They're worried about onboarding and helping people to build networks, that kind of thing. So they're some of the things that might come out as you start to consider the projected mess. We then ask them to project an ideal future without constraints. So throw away any constraints that you might have. So imagine you're designing the perfect workplace that kind of keeps the good things about what we've got now, solves some of the mess, and then come in and talk more about the probable future or the plausible future. I think plausible is the term we'll end up with, where it's basically, all right, well, let's apply some logical constraints. So you can start to see how it's a very complex way of looking at things that's simplified because Natalie is a genius at making complex concepts easy to facilitate. And that'll be one of the canvases. It's a nice little exercise. And what we hope that people can do with that is bring their people into the conversation about what they want the workplace to look like in the future and kind of deliberately design it in that direction.
So how do you make sure that you yourself look at this, review what you're doing, reiterate? And if there's any mistake, change?
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously an agile organisation, we drink our own champagne. So we've run all of these things. The Remote AF team was a mission team. We've run it using Remote AF's mission team model. A mission team is basically a team that you launch to tackle something that's super challenging that you're not going to be able to do with all the operational constraints of the organisation. So you kind of spin it out on the side, give it an objective and let it go, and make sure you're not introducing too much risk. So that mission team's been running using these things. We launched the team using the team launch canvas. We retrospect using some of the methods, and we've used a whole bunch of really cool tools that we've adopted. We did a virtual escape room the other day. We robbed a bank together as a bit of a team building exercise. Last week, I don't know if you've heard of Goiko Adjic's impact mapping, but we had Dave Berry and Saad Sahel from our Sydney and Melbourne teams in elabor8 running an impact mapping game for us, where a group of us were aliens and another group were humans. The aliens were secretly behind COVID-19 and were trying to keep the pandemic going, and the humans were trying to stop the pandemic. And we're kind of looking at war gaming using impact mapping. Very nerdy, I know. So yeah, we do a lot of fun stuff, and we're trying to push the boundaries of what great remote teams look like, so that we can share that with others. And look, I think the results speak for themselves. We had 80% of the framework built in about 2.5 months. We've now gone to market with it. We've got an amazing cohort to start with who are going to teach us, learn from us and teach us, and really they're a good confrontational, argumentative bunch who are going to help us to make this thing better. So yeah, we're looking forward to the next little while and making it better.
And by the way, what do these adopters or early adopters get? So if they go through the program with you, what's the result of that? They have access to the templates and the canvases and the way of thinking, and they can apply them to their customers, or how do you support them?
Yeah, so we've got two types. So there's the ones who want to use this in their organisations. We've got one person who's the head of people and culture for a really big retailer in Australia who wants to look at how to roll this out in his organisation. We've got Jay Allen and Kirsten over in South Africa who are looking to, they're gun remote facilitators who are looking to make agility work in remote organisations. So they'll be using it with their customers. We've got several people, one from Central Europe, one from, I can't remember the other geography, who are looking to train this. So they're looking to do the training with us, help their customers using it, but they also want to train other people in it. And then eventually we'll probably start talking to some service providers. So obviously elabor8's using this as part of what we do as a business, but I've deliberately made this arm's length from elabor8 so that we can sign up other organisations that want to use our ideas to help their customers change, because this is all about impact for us. It's how do we scale out the impact as big as we can. We don't have a lot of time with climate change. And I actually think that remote working is a feasible and particularly in this climate, it's a very plausible way to make a big difference.
It could be. It might just be, for sure. I mean, if you look at what has happened to nature in the past months, when we were all in home, inside, it's kind of amazing.
Yes, yeah. We had a seal in the Yarra today. I always refer to the Himalayas being visible from Kathmandu for the first time in living memory. Mm-hmm. What have you seen over there? And look, that stuff's pretty critical. I've got a mate who's in apex predator conservation. The one that's got me the most scared is he told me that for the first time in 300,000 years of evolutionary history, shark species have started interbreeding. So if they've been around as the apex predator for that long and been pretty comfortable where they're at, and all of a sudden they've got to breed with other species of sharks to try and adapt to something that's coming, I think it's high time that we act. For
those that want to reach out to you, either to learn more about the remote agility framework or to start being part of your trainings and use this in their organizations, how can they reach out, Andrew?
Yeah, so the website is www.remoteaf.co or remoteagilityframework.com. You can find me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. My LinkedIn handle, I think, is Andrew J. Blain, Blain. My Twitter handle is AJ Blain, again, Blain.
Like the magician, right?
Yeah. No, he's BL. Oh, he is. Yeah, maybe he is. Yeah, he's far more talented than me, though. So, yeah, I think he might have an E on the end from memory. But yeah, if you reach out, we'll put you in touch with the right people. And yeah, look, let's create a remote first world together. It's been an absolute privilege to be on this show because I know that you've been pushing the same sort of ideas for some time, and yeah, it's very cool.
Yes, I love remote work as well.
There's an opportunity here to build high trust environments where you don't have to be sitting on VC to prove that you're working.
Yeah.
And we are seeing significant productivity benefits. Most of the organizations that we work with who are recording the difference between on-premises and remote work are finding sort of 12 to 20% productivity benefits. So if the cost out from getting out of the corporate real estate isn't enough for you and the productivity benefits aren't enough for you, then think about the other amazing benefits, the sustainability, the sort of moving away from really hard borders between people as well.
Plus the increase in empathy, trust, autonomy, that I think is very important as well.
Oh, critical. Yeah. The human aspects here, that's what we want. We want high performance teams who are trusted by their leaders and do amazing work.
Yeah.
And they can do it from anywhere.
Andrew, thank you so much for today. It's been a pleasure as always talking with you.
No, thank you, Yulia. It's been very cool. Love talking to people across time zones. It's always good to see people starting their day when you're about to finish yours.
Next time we have a glass of wine together.
Definitely.
Hey, take care and good luck with the training that you have upcoming right now.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.